Hi, my name is Judith, and I am a high school English teacher. I also happen to be the high school Spanish teacher, as well as the K-12 Spanish teacher. Now, you may be wondering, how do I teach so much? Well, I'll fill you in. I teach at a small rural school of about 145, 150-ish students, give or take. I've been teaching there for 6 years. Before there, I taught in a pretty affluent community for 3 years. I taught high school English. And before that, I taught high school Spanish as a Teach for America teacher in inner city Philadelphia. So I've been teaching for a total of 11 years. And it's something that I think I always knew I was going to do as a profession, even though I might have denied that to myself and to others for the longest, but it was almost like it was meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm probably meant to do other things also, but I know that for at least a good chunk of my life, teaching is meant for me. And I'm grateful for that. I remember taking like a Harry Potter quiz. What would your profession be? And guess what? It's professor, teacher. So even in this fantasy world, it's again, I answer questions, teacher. I remember being 16 and listening to my English teacher say that teaching is the most fun job in the world because every day is something different. And boy, she won't lying. And it's kind of funny to be a teacher and think back on all the different things that teachers have said to us throughout the years and how influential those things really end up being, and how I perceive those things now that I'm a teacher and kind of the experiences I've gained from that. So I'm here to share with you some of my experiences with teaching. I've had a website, Devoted Scholar, for probably about 6 years. And before that, I had another WordPress site. I've always been into technology and kind of talking about school, but as any teacher knows, things pile up. Our desk is never clear, and my desk is definitely never clear. There's always another pile of papers to grade. There's always another committee to serve on. There's always another event that needs your help. And especially working in a small rural school, I feel like there are so many extra challenges with that because you're not just one person, you're 10 people in one. And it's a joy, but it's also can be burdensome at times too. And it's hard for me to say no. That's something I've had to learn too. Plus, I have 2 kids, 5 and under, and that can be kind of a lot to handle. And so anybody who's a working mother, a working parent, and a teacher, I commend you, because there are days when my kids get the short end of the stick, and that's not really fair, but that's real. It was kind of funny. My husband yesterday was saying how I say the same thing to him 6 times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's because I'm a teacher. And how many times do we have to say the same thing to our students before they actually hear it? I told my students today, I was like, if you actually listen the whole lesson, you'd probably hear me just repeat myself over and over and over and over and over. But I mean, it is human nature to kind of tune things out. Even the most engaging teacher, which I try to be, I try to make class fun. I try to make it engaging as possible. It's still hard to capture anyone's attention 100% of the time. You may even be checking your phone as you're watching this video, or scrolling through other tabs, or listening to somebody else talk next to you. And I get it. We're busy, So that brings me to my next point. Part of the reason I am deciding to start a teacher vlog is because I really want to share some of the things I've learned along my journey and also reflect on some of the things I've done on my journey as a teacher. And unfortunately, that's something that I just don't give myself enough time for. I have, I love blogging. I love writing, but there's something about, for me as an English teacher, to actually sit down and write. It's like, it's such a process for me, and I just don't have time, you know? I hate to say that cliche, but I don't. I don't have time, as much time as I'd like to dedicate to it. If that were my job, oh, sweet. I would love to, you know, write blog posts all day about philosophy and teaching and you know, reflections, but I want things in real time. And I thought, hey, you know, video is a good alternative to that, and another way to kind of share ideas and get y'all's feedback on things too. Now, you may notice I have a little dino here. I am also a VIP kid teacher. So if you see these videos and you're curious about that too, you can contact me. I don't really recruit for them. I've never done that, but if you had questions, I'd be glad to answer them and ask them. But I've been doing that for a year now. I just signed my 3rd contract and I love it. It's where you teach ESL to Chinese kids, and you don't actually have to be a teacher to do it. You just need a bachelor's degree. And I think it's a lot of fun. So if that's something you're interested, you can pop in a comment below. But back to my main topic, I have been wanting to vlog because I want to talk about things happening in real time in my classroom and share those with others, because I personally gain so much from following different teachers online and learning so much from them. You know, Lauren Randazzo, I love her stuff. I think she's genius, you know, and I read all of her blog posts. The Daring English Teacher, she's another one I like to follow and I've learned a lot from technology-wise, just to name a few. There's more, but I think that it's so inspiring, these teachers who dedicate not only like time to their profession, but also time to bettering the profession as a whole for everyone. And I'd like to give back too a little bit, because I've kind of been a quiet observer for a long time, and I want to kind of share some of the things I've learned. And I also, like I said, I want to reflect on the things I'm doing currently in my classroom, and I'm hoping that video helps me be a little bit more timely with that, because as you know, it's like, oh, that's a great blog post, I should say something about that, and then it's like 3 months later and you're like, what was that about? So something that I should mention is that I have been completely transformed in my teaching by the mass customized learning approach. Now, if you are unfamiliar with this approach to teaching, it's pretty incredible. Basically, Bay McGarvey and Charles Schwann in 2002, I believe, wrote the book Inevitable. And in their book, they kind of detail what the learning day should look like and how drastically different it is from the learning day that we have currently. And it's very different. And it really kind of challenged me as an educator. And it's something that our superintendent kind of introduced to me, and that I learned to, you know, I learned more about, read the book first. That's my first step if you're interested in that particular movement. And then kind of have taken years of trying to implement that into my classroom. It's definitely not something that is like flip of the switch. However, I do think there are components that you can implement right away into your classroom. But, you know, I think it takes a lot of time, especially if you're a traditionally trained teacher, which I guess I wasn't really necessarily traditionally trained because I'm a Teach for America teacher. But if you're kind of going from that traditional mode of teaching into this new mode, or it's kind of actually, I think, a return to the old ways, really. But if you are kind of been doing things for a long time the same way, it might be more challenging. I almost think that teachers who are coming right out of the gates as new teachers kind of have an advantage, because you're just going to absorb whatever it is that is being faced in front of you, because that's your option, right? So I really fell in love with this because it is a return to what I call the one-room schoolhouse. And so that each student basically is met where they're at in their learning. There's no, oh, you come in on day 27 of the second semester and you should be on this page of this book on that concept. I mean, how confining, constricting, and unrealistic that is. And, you know, you think I may be joking, but my first job, that's how it was. The expectation was you were on this page at this date, at this time, on this concept. And hey, it doesn't matter that your kids are reading at a fourth grade level and you're teaching a ninth grade class. Doesn't matter. You're expected to meet that. And guess what? At the end of the week, there's a benchmark. And after that benchmark, there's a walkthrough by the higher ups in your, in your district. So that's very nerve-wracking right out of the gate as a young teacher. And those are the kind of things that I was faced with. And it was intimidating. And realistically, it was not even possible. I mean, you cannot rush a student's learning. They're going to learn at the pace that they can learn at. And gosh, how many kids do we turn off from learning because we demand that they be faster, better, smarter than where they're at right then? And then on the flip side of that, how many kids do we hold back because we're trying to teach to the middle, right? Isn't that kind of what we do? We have the bottom, we have the middle where most of them lie, and then we have the high flyers. They are held back too. And I think about certain students, and I can think of their names, their faces, the year I taught them, what course, because I remember, gosh, you deserve so much more. And unfortunately, because the way I'm confined to traditional teaching, I can't give it to you right now. And, you know, I try to do differentiation and extension, but as you guys know, that's hard. You know, you have a class of 24 kids, you have 24 different learners, and that's a challenge. And so that's another thing about mass customized is I feel like differentiation is like already built into the whole theory. And so it's not as hard to think of. It's not like every lesson you're like, how can I do this? Right? It's kind of in the way that you're doing the teaching, it's going to be differentiated because you're going to let kids have some voice and choice. And so that's the next component, right? Is you're giving kids choice on what they want to learn and not complete choice. I mean, I still teach American literature and we still hit all the classics, right? Because that's kind of what is expected of me as a teacher and is from my district, from my state, from parents, from colleges, and I'm glad to oblige. But the format in which I deliver it, I can give kids choice in how they show their learning or how they learn. And that can be super empowering. I also like that kids, so I talked about pace, I talk about choice and voice, meeting kids where they're at in their learning. Those are all huge components of mass customized, and I think that are so cool. Now that's just barely scratching the surface of what mass customized can be, but it's, I think, revolutionary. And if you haven't dabbled in it, then look, because I think, as the book title suggests, it's inevitable. Now, it's really easy to kind of preach, oh yes, meet every learner where they're at. Every kid can learn. You know, give them all the choices in the world. Realistically, you are human and there's no perfect answer for any kid. And so we have to find, you know, solutions that are realistic, feasible, implementable, and effective, right? And that's really challenging. And I think I still I'm learning. Here's the thing. If you're a good teacher, you never stop learning, right? I'm still changing up every year how I do things. I'm still learning every year. And that's what keeps it fresh for me too. I think that, oh my gosh, how boring it would be to pull out the same carbon copy of the same thing you've done every year for the last 10 years. Like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't. Even though it's more work to kind of reinvent it, that's to me part of the fun too. But basically, it's important that we find ways that make this a realistic implementation. And so that's kind of what this blog is going to further explore. I'm going to give some insights of things that I learned. I'm also going to challenge you to kind of help me, because I guess I am a selfish teacher and that I want to better my practice too. And I am not too proud to say that I learn constantly from teachers who are older, teachers who are younger, teachers who are my age. You know, there's a lot of valuable insight from all age groups and all different kinds of teachers, different subject areas. I think once you turn off your ears to those things, you're really kind of limiting yourself on your growth as a professional. And so I'm going to share things with you hopefully in real time. I'm currently doing a book study that I want to share with you about, standards-based grading and mastery-based grading and all that fun stuff that I think is also inevitable because parents, once they get hooked onto it, they're going to demand it. Schools are going to demand it. If they don't already, I believe the state of Maine has implemented the whole state be graded this way. And that's something I've really focused on this year is my grading practice because I'm a firm believer that grades should not be a punishment, but rather should reflect learning. And that is so hard because you have those kids who, if they don't get the participation points, they're not passing, and you want to pass them along, but should they be passed along if they don't master the content? Is that fair to them in the long run? Is that fair to everyone else? Is that fair to the next teacher? And these are all questions that I've been kind of really challenging myself with. On the flip side of that, what about the kid who does nothing, twiddles his thumbs, is disrespectful, and then gives a great speech in speech class? Should he be penalized for behaviors? Definitely not, right? So grading is something that I am really challenging myself with, and that's what my current book study is about. I read Hacking the Grade a while ago just because, like several years ago, because I knew that grading was kind of on the next frontier, and for me personally, and it sounds like my district is kind of challenging. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're approaching that challenge now currently. And it's exciting, it's scary, it's enlightening, and it's revolutionary to me at least. I think that, let's bring the joy back into learning. And gosh, if there's nothing that sucks joy out of learning more, it's grades, right? So anybody who's received a bad grade knows that. Anybody who's given a bad grade knows that. So not that I don't want to hold kids accountable, but what are ways that we can do that are constructive to their learning and not just, this is it, that's you, moving on. So I'm going to talk quite a bit about that in the next couple weeks just because that's something I'm personally challenging myself in. But I will try to kind of touch on other topics within the mass customized learning realm. And again, please feel free to leave comments. Something that I've noticed is there's just not a lot of people talking about this. There's not a lot of people writing about this currently. I mean, there's the authors, there are some, but it's not a lot on the web when you compare it to other, project-based learning approaches or, all these other philosophies. And so please let me know if you have more questions about it, or, even if you think, oh, that's garbage. Yeah, that's fine, because maybe you have a good point, and, my mind has been changed before, though I doubt my mind will be changed so entirely on this concept. But I'm not too proud to, change my mind either. So thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you again. This is my channel, Devoted Scholar. You can check out my website, devotedscholar.com. My website itself has kind of gone through several transformations, so if you see kind of like some different tabs of classes, I used to use it as like an LMS or a learning management system, but now that my school has switched over to Canvas, and I don't really use that anymore for that. I just use it for kind of blogging and sharing things about teaching, so it's kind of gone through a facelift over the years. So feel free to check that out, and please let me know if there's another topic you want me to cover, or if you like the video, or if you don't like the video, tell me that too, and then I can try to improve it. I'm all for constructive feedback, all right? Because, our students need that too to better themselves. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to growing with you, and I hope that you can share some of your experiences with me, and maybe I can kind of let you think of some things that are different and new. All right, thank you, and have a wonderful day. See you next time.